Hi everyone, it is October, and as every Warhammer fan knows, that means it's Orktober. Now, that means you have to, by law, paint a Space Ork. Now, not wishing to upset the gods of Ork and Morka, I will be doing that, and I'm going to pick out this fella. Okay, so he is obviously, I've pinned him to the base already, and I've thrown some sand over the base. So let's get some primer over him and take it from there. Okay, so with that primer on him, we can see him a little bit better now. So let's take a nice closer look at him. So he's a completely lead miniature. He's from 1989. He's one of the ones designed by Kev Adams. And this is the sort of the Rogue Trader era. On the real kind of the first real attempt at sort of establishing the look and lore of Space Orks. He is a Ork Nob, which is short for noble, and that's why he's in this power armor. So he's a wealthy orc, and he's nice and flashy. So I really enjoy these 89 series orcs. I've got a whole bunch of them. I'm working my way through trying to paint them all. If you want to check out how I pinned him to the base and how I do the base material, I've got another video where I did a freebooter orc and I run through that whole process. This is an unusual one because a lot of the orcs from this era had plastic arms and weapons that you would put on. This guy is completely all one solid piece, so there was no assembling or anything like that required. He seems to have like a skull on the back there. He's got a power fist and quite a nice sharp pointy gun with a nice blade on the bottom of him. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is sort out the power armor. So I'm going to go with a sort of reddy orange look. So the first thing I'm going to do is base the whole of the power armor in red, and I'm going to go with the tried and true classic Mephiston red. Okay, with that red nicely watered down, I'm just going to go over the whole model and slap that on. Make sure to work it in all the recesses, and trick here is just to get a nice even coat across the whole model. So after 2 thin coats of that red, this is what you're left with. So what I'm going to do now is take some Nuln Oil, and I'm going to go over the entire model. And again, what I'm looking to do here is just fill in all the recesses to bring out some of that detail. So just a case of slathering it on, making sure it doesn't pull too much, making sure it goes on evenly. And with that shade dry, you can see that all the sort of the recesses have now been darkened down. Brings out the detail. You can see in particular around the bottom of the boots there. So what I'm going to do now is take a bit of that original Mephiston red, and I'm going to add in a bit of Troll Slayer orange. And then what I'm going to do is start slowly working a dry brush over the whole model. So what the plan is obviously to keep the recesses dark and just slowly start bringing up the colour all around the edges of the armour. And what I'm going to do is just gradually increase the amount of brightness into that red, keep adding a bit more orange, and then start to add in a bit of yellow to that orange as well. And that's what we're left with after all that dry brushing. Now it may look like it's a little heavy in places, but once we add in some extra colours and everything, it'll all blend together quite nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do is take some lead belcher, and I'm going to start marking in any areas that I want to be silver. So for that, that's mostly going to be sort of around the armour, places where we've got some kind of sort of coils, that kind of thing. Really anything that I think is going to look a bit better in that colour. I'm going to also add some other metallics after that, so I don't have to go too heavy, but yeah, I'm just going to start going around, seeing what I think is going to work best. Okay, so with that silver applied, what I'm going to now do is take some Balthasar gold and apply that to any other parts, things like rivets, grills, things like that. Let's see, there's a couple of good ones here. Again, just to break up some of that armour and add a bit more interest. So I actually changed that Balthasar gold to just Retributor gold, because when I put that gold on, it wasn't really showing up that well. So I just made a little bit of change there. So you can see some of the rivets I've done in gold, some of the grills I've done, and then some of the other rivets I've actually done in silver, just because I think it showed up a little bit easier. So I'm going to do the skin next, and for skin, for these, you know, old school orcs, the best colour to use is Goblin Green, I think, by Vallejo. And it's a real nice kind of very bright green. So again, for here, what I'm going to do is just cover entire across the face, and also the hand that's not holding the gun here. Okay, next I'm going to do a touch of Corax White, and on the back here he has like a skull in the middle there, so I'm just going to go over that completely in white. Okay, so with that skull now painted white, what I'm going to do is apply a couple of shades. So I'm going to do Bealtan Green all over the green parts, and I'm going to do Null Null all over the silver of the gun, and a touch over that skull as well to bring out the details. So it's just a case of shaking up your washes and just grabbing any sort of brush. I mean, this model is so small that you don't need a big brush at all for the amount of shade we're going to put on. So just focus that in a bit, and then yeah, just spread it all over, making sure that you try and get as much as you can in the recess. Now obviously that will darken down this green, but we're going to bring that colour back up in the next step. So taking these three colours, which is essentially the original green we just did, some yellow and some white, what I've got on my palette here, I've put a few drops of them all separately, and what I'm going to do is sort of gradually mix in each one, going from green to yellow to white, adding in more and basically making that green lighter and lighter each time. And so the reason I'm doing that is what I'm going to do is bring up the colour on the face and on the hand. So that wash has darkened down the colour a little bit. So all we need to do now is just try and bring out those details. As I say, it's a case of mixing in those colours until you've got a slightly lighter shade, because you want to do it in stages. And sorry, this might blur a little bit, but what you want to do, there's no exact science to this, but you just kind of want to concentrate on the raised areas, nose, brow, that type of stuff. And as I say, you can sort of see already that's slightly lightened up those three areas I've just done. And the case is just, again, going backwards and forwards and brighten it up until you're at a level where you think that's how you want it. As I say, there's no exact science to this, so I'm going to do the same thing. All you really want to do is obviously try and avoid the recesses where that shade has gone in. So again, if I can try and get that to focus with the fingers there. Obviously you want to, there we go, you want to get the recess in between each of those fingers darkened, as you can see, and then just brighten up the actual finger tips on the top. So it's just a case of going across the whole model, sorry, going across the whole of the green areas, bringing up those colours, and as I say, you'll just naturally get to a point where you want to sort of finish. So when I come back, that should be a lot brighter. So you can see on my palette, this is the green that I took it up to with the yellow, and you can see it's much lighter shade. So this is where we're at the moment. So you can see the recesses are still darker. I'll try and focus that in a bit more. There we go. You can see the recesses are darker. You can see the hands, fingers are lighter. So again, following the same process, and now what I'm going to do is add a touch of that white into this green, just to bring it up that little bit more. And this is just going to be the finishing touch. And what I'm going to do is kind of dab this on the real prominent parts. So what I'm going to do, I think, onto the knuckles, and just as a little dot on each one. Then again, looking at the main features of the face. So the nose, just lighten that up ever so slightly. And the ridges of the eyes. Okay, it's subtle, but it does make a difference, and it looks a lot brighter in person than the camera's catching. But I'm just going to go and carry on seeing if there's anywhere else that needs touching up with that green, and then I'll come back. Now I've moved the camera around here so you can see the light a little bit better. That's the final result of the green. So fairly happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is dot in the eyes, just a bit of red there, to finish off that face. Now I was feeling especially brave then, and I actually did a little dot of white on each of those red eyes as well. It just makes him have a little bit of a glowy eye, more menacing look. So what I'm going to do now is take some Warcast bone, and I'm going to just apply a coat over this kind of bone-like thing coming out of the shoulder pad here. Now I'm going to take a touch of black, and I'm just going to paint in the casing of the gun. So, I mean, you could just leave it completely silver, but I want a little touch more detail. So I'm just going to go around the top of the casing here. And then it's a case of doing a wash of Agrax Earthshade, or any sort of brown really, over the horn. Next I'm going to take a touch of Administratum Grey, and I'm going to do a very light edge highlight along the black bits of the barrel that I just painted in. So there's not really much of a straight edge to work with these old models, so you just got to take your time and do the best you can. And then after that edge highlight is done, what I'm going to do is essentially the same thing again, but this time with a lighter silver. I'm going to use Runefang Steel, and again I'm going to go and sort of edge highlight some of the corners, the edges of the blade on the gun, tips of the barrel, that kind of thing. And now the very last thing I'm going to do before I'm basing it is I'm going to take a little bit of Screaming Skull and just do a slight, very light dry brush over the tip of this horn, just to give it a bit more interest. And then once that's done, I'm just going to base it the same as I've based my other Orc army, and then we'll call it done. So here he is, all finished up. I've completed the base. Just rotate him around a little bit. Sorry if he goes out of focus. So one thing I did actually do is I changed the skull on the back there. I decided that the white wasn't really doing it for me, so I changed it to a gold. I think that looks a little bit better. These guys are really, really small. You can see the size of the model against my thumb. Warhammer's gotten a lot bigger. I say a lot bigger, it's still pretty small, admittedly. That's why it's struggling to focus so much. But yeah, these old models are probably, I want to say at least a third smaller, if not half the size of sort of current orcs are nowadays. So they are a little bit trickier to paint, but I don't know, for me they still have a character to them that some of the, the modern ones just don't sort of embody in quite the same way. So one thing finally to do is I'm going to add him to my collection. So I'm going to take you over to where I've got my other guys. So here is my current lineup of vintage orcs. They're mostly the Mad Boys. I've got a boss there, and I did a freebooter, which I did in a previous video. So I think there's just about enough room. I think it's going to be the last one that I can fit on here. But let's see, just about go. There we go. So that's going to give him his new home and join in the rest of the guys. So yeah, any more I do, I'm going to have to go down to a level now. So this is sort of my complete vintage painted up collection, and I've also got two
night goblins. Everything else I've done over the years, it's all been plastics. This isn't everything, but this is pretty much the stuff that I've painted the best. The early sort of things when I learnt to paint hasn't made it into the cabinet. There was a few fails along the way. Okay, so that's just about wrap it up for this video. I will see you in the next one, and happy Orktober, everyone.